إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونتوب إليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد, if we look and study the way the world is moving, and we study the way the nations are working amongst each other, how we have the super nations and we have the developing nations and we have less developed nations, and how they are cooperating and working together, some forcibly and some not. We try to understand through the examples of the past what Allah Ta'ala describes as leadership, and as leaders, and every one of us as individuals is responsible to establish a leadership that drives them in their families in a way that Allah Ta'ala will be pleased with. But when we're talking about leadership of nations, and we're looking into the Quran, and we're trying to understand the different examples that Allah Ta'ala has given us to remind us of our responsibility, we see that the example of Musa alayhi salam and Fir'aun are always being used. And Fir'aun as a leader has been described over 60 times. Now why would Allah Ta'ala be describing Fir'aun over and over again? Why would he be using the example of Fir'aun? And what is the significance for us today? Now, if we study Fir'aun and we study his example, we know that he was a person who was in love with himself, a person who had a surrounding that was built on what Fir'aun thought was right, as he thought he was the king. He thought he was a god. He thought he was the reason why people should be living. And he used people. And there are people around him that followed, and people that are around him that praised him. And there were people who basically felt that their benefit is through the benefit of Fir'aun. And then there were those who did not see eye to eye with Fir'aun, and those are the people who were transgressed against. And if we see how this is an example in our time, where a person thinks that he is what has made the nation. Now, if we recall that Egypt at its time, during the time of Pharaoh, was considered one of the greatest nations. It had great resources, buildings. It was considered the greatest nation of its time. So when Pharaoh was establishing himself and running things the way he thought it was best, he thought that he was the reason for the success of Egypt. It was all about him. And this is what brought down the kingdom of Egypt. And this is what brought down Pharaoh himself, and this is what brought down those who were around him. So if we look at the first example of bad leadership, we look at Pharaoh and his example, and he thought he was so high in the Pharaoh, ala fil ard. وكان من المسرفين. إن فرعون علا في الأرض. He thought he was high, he was above the law, he was everything, and that everybody owed him. You owe me. You owe me for establishing this nation. You owe me for your life. You owe me for living. This is what he was saying. And if we resemble what we see in different nations in the world now, we have many people resembling a Pharaoh, saying that they're everything and we should be following them. So when we're looking at them above everybody and everybody below, the second item is that the arrogance that these leaders have, they transgress against everybody, and they feel that it is their right to oppress, and they exaggerate in their oppression and their aggression against people because they feel that they have a right, and they look down upon people as if they're not worthy of being around them. They mock them. They make them feel low, that these people are from a different race, that these people are from a different kind. And we're seeing this amongst the nations of the world now, where if we want to divide people, what do? We put them into different classes, into different groups. This person all of a sudden became different because he's black. This person also became different because he's a Muslim. This person became different now because he's from Pakistan. This person's Asian. This person is North American First Nations. These people deserve to be on a reserve. These are the types of talks that we hear from people. Go back to your home, you're not from us. Why? Because these are instigated from people right from the top, making us feel that we are different. So there is arrogance. And in arrogance comes the lack of knowledge, ignorance. And when you put ignorance and arrogance together, it's a formula for corruption. When Musa alayhi salam visited Fir'aun, he came to him, and he came to talk to him about Allah Ta'ala and the greatness of Allah Ta'ala, and that Allah Ta'ala created us. He created us equally, and He created the resources in this land for us to provide us the security and the ability to be able to utilize what Allah Ta'ala has provided us. For the reason, the only reason is to find salvation in worshiping Allah Ta'ala. And when he was in his discussions with Fir'aun expressed himself by saying, "Who is your Lord? وَمَا رَبُّكُمْ?" Who is your Lord? So immediately he acted negatively against Musa alayhi salam. And Musa's reply to him was a reply of peace. When Allah Ta'ala said, "Idhhab ila Fir'aun innahu tagha," knowing that Fir'aun was one of the greatest opponents of Allah, that this is an example for us if we ourselves want to be considered people who want to struggle for the truth. We want to attempt to challenge even those as difficult as Fir'aun. But first of all, we come to them with beautiful words and beautiful teachings from Allah Ta'ala, the teachings that Allah Ta'ala has given us. So when Musa alayhi salam struggled to give Fir'aun and his followers a message of peace, what did Fir'aun say? Fir'aun was eloquent in his speech, and his power of speech was so strong that everybody around him believed him. So what did he say immediately? He said that this is a magician. So usually the leaders of countries will have consultants, a bitana. They will have consultants around them. He went to his bitana, his followers, and his followers had advised him to bring the magicians from all parts of Egypt to challenge this great magician. So when the magicians came and challenged Musa alayhi salam, and we all know the story, that the tricks of the consultants and the tricks of Fir'aun did not work, as the magicians all put their head to the ground in humbleness to Allah Ta'ala when they heard and seen the actions of Musa alayhi salam, and seen that the truth that Musa alayhi salam had brought them. So a leader came and seen that he was being challenged, and that seen that his first test had failed. So what did he say in his eloquence, in his speech? And we see the same thing happening in all parts of the world, in all times. And in our time, we resemble the same thing. If somebody's challenged, they'll always have an excuse. They'll say, they say that these words are all false, and these words are all lies, as they have plotted against me overnight. And what did the people that followed him say? They all, his bitana, they all followed him, and they believed him. So those who were around him immediately had something to benefit from being with Fir'aun. So they believed him, and they assumed his struggle. So Musa alayhi salam and his community struggled and were persecuted. And we see the same things happening in our time, and in the Muslim lands and in non-Muslim lands amongst our own people, where we're being labeled with Islamophobia, where we're being put in a position of compromise. And I'm seeing that there's a few people here from Montreal, and in Montreal we're seeing that the law is putting emphasis on preventing our sisters from wearing hijab in public places. And this, again, is another way to be eloquent in their speech by saying that this is freedom, yet at the same time, people should not be imposing their religion on us in their schools, in public places. وأقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله. إن الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه، وصلي وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Now, where is this khutbah headed? And the khutbah is headed in proposing to us that we all should consider Musa alayhi salam and his action, putting his actions based on his submission to Allah Ta'ala. And after he submitted to Allah Ta'ala, he raised his hands asking Allah Ta'ala for help. He did what he had to do. So what we need to do as Muslims is be Muslims of our time and try to establish ourselves and try to establish what is right. Now, when we have leadership who transgress, it is our right to be able to stand up. We had a right a few weeks ago. We had the ability to vote in our elections. And I'm assuming that not everybody was involved in that movement of voting and trying to establish ourselves here in Canada. This is a responsibility for all of us. If we want to survive here and establish a place for our children, we need to struggle. We need to move forward, knowing that every step that we make is going to be the step that is going to place a path for our children, a path for the people of this country. What should we do as individuals when we see the lack of participation of Muslims? Everybody feels that they want to focus on their own selves. They want to be self-sufficient. They want to be self-centered. It's only about me. When we're looking at Islam and the message that Islam has, Islam is giving us a message of unity, of brotherhood, of working together, of establishing our path together. And when we want to establish ourselves here in this country, we can't do anything about what's going on in different parts of the world, whether it's in Kashmir, whether it's in Somalia, whether it's in Yemen, or in Syria, or other places. But we can make a difference here. So we need to be the Moses of this time. We need to put our foot down and work together. We need to establish ourselves in our community centers, and we need to support those who are spending ample amount of time that you may not notice. The people of the Islamic Center have been establishing this place for us to come in to remind us of our responsibility. And we need to all input. And sometimes there's certain areas where I think that we can benefit, or we could help, or we could advise. And we need to be positive in providing them positive criticism. We cannot be negative all the time. Every time something happens in the Islamic Center, for example, that we hold the people here who are volunteering from their time, just like any others, they're volunteering. We cannot come down on them all the time. Sometimes they will need a little bit of support. And we do appreciate the work that the board of directors and the leadership has been doing here in the Islamic Center. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. وارض اللهم عن الأربعة الخلفاء الراشدين أبي بكر وعمر وعثمان وعلي ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. اللهم ول أمورنا خيارنا ولا تولي أمورنا شرارنا، وارفع مقتك وغضبك عنا ولا تؤاخذنا بما فعل السفهاء منا، وتوفنا وأنت راض عنا يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم اغفر المسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات، إنك سميع قريب يجيب الدعوات يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم ول أمورنا خيارنا ولا تولي أمورنا شرارنا، وارفع مقتك وغضبك عنا ولا تؤاخذنا بما فعل السفهاء منا، وتوفنا وأنت راض عنا يا أرحم الراحمين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. أقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر، أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة، حي على الفلاح، قد قامت الصلاة، قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله.
استووا واعتدلوا، صفوفكم واعتدلوا. الله أكبر. بسم الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن. ويل لكل همزة لمزة الذي جمع مالا وعدده يحسب أن ماله أخلده كلا لينبذن في الحطمة وما أدراك ما الحطمة نار الله الموقدة التي تطلع على الأفئدة إنها عليهم مؤصدة في عمد ممددة. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
جزاك الله خير. وعليكم Just a quick announcement here. His sister, Lubna, who just recently had surgery, so we just asked everyone to go out for her.